Good morning, everyone. This is Jeffe Kennedy, author of fantasy romance and romantic fantasy. I'm here with my first cup of coffee. Delicious. One thing I like about these chimes, the outdoor chimes, is that the tone lingers, humming in the air like that. Isn't that lovely? Today is Thursday, April 21st. Back out in the grape arbor, as those of you on video will note. And we've had such high winds. So it's a combination of things. The recent high winds are blowing in the tumbleweeds, which we have copious numbers of because we had a robust monsoon season last summer. And with all that robustness comes lots of rain, means lots of plant matter that springs up. And so we have lots and lots of I don't want to say dead. It's like cured vegetation. It's part of the natural cycle because it dried out over the winter, and the tumbleweeds are that's part of their thing is they're made to tumble, which means that when they cure, they easily pop up off of their roots and I don't even know the mechanism, but there's some sort of severing there, and then they tumble, scattering their seeds. And people are always surprised by this. Uh, I decided to move slightly so you could see the flowering crabapple tree. It's a little bit better view. But most people are surprised by this when I tell them that tumbleweeds are not indigenous to the American West. They are an exotic, which is part of what makes them so pernicious. Uh, David was commenting on this the other day, both of us being children of the American West. Me growing up in Denver, Colorado, him up in northern Wyoming, Buffalo, Wyoming. And he was saying something. He likes watching Westerns, which I really don't. But neither one of us is much into Western kitsch at all. And my contention has always been that it's because the Western kitsch has very little to do with actual life in the West. And so he was commenting about the wren is up here talking to me. He was talking about how Western movies don't accurately portray the West at all. I was like, yeah, I know, right? And, we were talking about the tumbleweed thing. You cannot have a Western movie without a tumbleweed tumbling across the road, and yet those are exotics. Same with horses. Horses are not indigenous to North America. They're an old world species. Horses only made it to the American West because the Spanish conquistadors brought them. So the whole idea of people get very caught up in the romanticism of the wild horses, and saving the wild horses, and that's part of the natural land to have the wild horses. And it's like, well, actually, no. Horses, tumbleweeds, introduced, not part of the American West at all. And now me with my walled garden here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Uh, the winds are wafting the tumbleweeds over and piling them up. So I actually took a few moments to de-tumbleweed the background. But there's a whole bunch over in this corner. Actually, you could probably see it if you're on video. If you look over towards the bird bath over there, see all of those tumbleweeds piled up in there? This garden was clean before this. But no, it'll stop eventually. One would hope. I bought my hanging plants for the summer. I'll show you guys those. See, look at that. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful petunia baskets sitting there on the floor of the grape arbor because it's supposed to freeze Saturday. Our frost-free date is May 22nd is our last frost. And normally it's not that late. But I called my favorite nursery the other day, and what was it? Tuesday. I called them to find out when they were going to get their hanging baskets in because they have the best ones. Best ones, best price. Aren't they beautiful? and said, when are you going to get them in? And she said, oh, we're already almost sold out. And I was like, fuck. I was afraid of that because they do this every year. Like they don't have them, don't have them, don't have them. And then all of a sudden their greenhouse that grows them just a little ways away from here sends them all. And there is like a secret signal, you guys, that I do not know. I'm signed up for their newsletter. They don't ever send their newsletter. They don't update their website. I mean, in many ways, gotta love them, right? How do people know? So she says, come today. So I actually took time out of my day on Tuesday, even though I had like other things going on, and did an emergency trip to the nursery and bought all of my hanging plants, which I'm not going to hang yet because it's going to freeze on Saturday. And so I will have to bring them inside. Is this what everybody does? I feel like I've been here, it'll be 13 years in August, and I feel like there's still this Santa Fe mystique that I'm kind of missing out on, that I don't know how things work. And if I do find out, of course, I will not tell you guys, because then I will be in on the secret and you will not get to know. So, something that's been on my mind. Actually, hold on a moment. I changed my mind. I was going to do something, but I can wait. These need to be watered, but I don't have to compulsively do it right now. When my coffee is hot, I shall chat. Um, a total aside, but I don't know, Grace, if you are keeping up with the podcast. Probably not. But Grace is just having a shit year, you guys. Grace Draven, my bestie. I was chatting with her some yesterday. Send her some love. The woman needs some love. It's not her, it's her family. Everything in her family is just like going topsy turvy. So, on my mind. So, I've been thinking about the volunteer ethic. Being current president of SFWA, Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association, uh, it's a volunteer job. Some people seem to be surprised by this. It's a volunteer job. Yeah, I do not get paid. In fact, our whole board of directors is a volunteer board of directors because we are a 501c3 charitable organization. We cannot pay our board of directors because when you run a charity and you get tax exempt status for running a charitable organization, one of the stipulations is that the people running the organization cannot be using the charitable funds to line their own pockets. And for those of you who were not around in the 80s and 90s when some of this shit went down, there were, what was it, UNICEF? There were a couple of high profile cases where the people who were on the boards of directors of these really big charitable organizations were taking most of the money to enrich themselves, and the rest, very small percentages were going to the charities or the people they purported to be supporting. SIFWA exists to support writers and the genre community, and volunteers are our lifeblood. We have a few people on staff, and we have a few people that we contract work out to occasionally. But for the most part, it's run by volunteers. And we recently had a deal where a volunteer demanded to be paid a whole lot of money to continue their work. And I had explained that we can't do that. And the person became very upset with me and accused me of trying to besmirch their reputation by I don't know what all. And one thing this person kept saying was, when I volunteered for this position, I understood it would be paid. And so I had an Inigo Montoya moment where I was saying, you keep using this word volunteer, and I don't think it means what you think it means. And it's been on my mind, obviously, because this was a difficult situation. But it's it's interesting to note that maybe is the volunteer ethic not as strongly understood in younger generations now? Um, I know that it's always been a thing where the volunteer ethic is very strong in particular families. I think people either learn it in their family or they don't. And I also know that volunteering comes from a place of privilege. And this is something I've talked about a great deal, especially with, helping marginalized people become more involved in some of these organizations where, those of us who can afford to volunteer huge amounts of our time, uh, you tend to get really privileged people running things, and you don't always want that situation, right? We don't want that situation. But it's a delicate balance. Um, I think we could argue about whether I can afford to volunteer this as much of my time. But I also grew up in a family where we volunteered a lot of our time, whether we could afford it or not. Now, obviously, we always had that level of privilege where we weren't worried about a roof over our heads. And the example I often think of is, like the single parent, usually a single mother, who is working, sometimes a couple of jobs plus single parenting her children. And every moment of her day is crammed with things that she must do. Uh, and we could talk about that. Maybe parenting in a way is the ultimate volunteer job, right? You don't get paid to be a parent, and you give everything to it. It's kind of an obligation. You can't walk away from it. But one of our other volunteers that we were in a meeting yesterday, we were thanking her for sticking with it. And she's like, "Oh, I'll stick with it." She said, "That's the Midwesterner in me. We do not give up." Made me laugh. But these things do come from our raising, right? Whether or not we believe in sticking a thing through all the way, uh, whether we volunteer time. Um, my family was always very politically active. Both of my parents volunteered a whole lot in politics. And sometimes volunteer positions lead to jobs. Like my mom, after she was widowed when I was only 3, she had money supporting her from the Air Force from my father's death, but she couldn't, she needed things to do. She needed to occupy herself. And she began volunteering for a political campaign. For those of you familiar with Denver history, she volunteered on Dale Tooley's campaign for district attorney. And after he was elected, he offered her a job. Sometimes it works that way. However, it's not a direct line. Um, and maybe this is like an inside thing that people who are coming at this system, again, the mystique. How do people know when the hanging plants are ready? How do you know whether or not maybe you'll get a job? Um, and I know that it's partly our responsibility to clarify these things for the community, to let people know how this stuff works. Um, One of the things I talk about often about volunteering for SIFWA and volunteering for anything in general is it does a few things. It it allows you to participate in the organization in a way that being a member doesn't. You get to know people because you're working together with people on stuff. It's just part of how, I don't know, life and humanity works. You network with people. People know who you are, so that when you come back to people and say, "Hey, will you help promote my book?" You're not coming to them from out of the blue. Back to the hanging baskets. It's like I feel like I need a friend at the nursery, right? Um, I need to make friends with somebody there who will slip me the news. The hanging plants are in. Not that I'm obsessed, people. Another thing that volunteering does, and I have said this out loud to a number of our volunteers who have apologized for lack of experience or for messing something up, is I will tell them it is not a big deal, because part of the point of volunteering is you get to practice new skills, and your life isn't on the line. Your mortgage isn't on the line. If you screw up, you screw up and we fix it. But volunteering is a great way to try out new stuff. Uh, but I this seems to be coming up against some of the other ethics lately about people deserve to be paid for their work, which is yes, yes, absolutely, people deserve to be paid for their work, but we also rely on volunteerism to make a lot of stuff run. So we can't pay everybody. We are not allowed to pay people, even if we uh, had the money, the infinite funds to do it. We are not allowed to do it because IRS. And every once in a while, someone accuses me of using the IRS as an excuse, and it's like, yeah, no. This is a thing. It's a real thing. And as president of the organization, um, it falls to me and the board of directors to be fiscally responsible for how the organization is run. So if we lose our tax exempt status, it's my fault. So sometimes I have to be a hard ass, which I don't like being, but there we are. But I talked some time ago about people, requiring everyone who works on a convention to be volunteers, not paying anybody, and how that leaves out the marginalized groups. That leaves out our single mother who can't afford to volunteer her time. She's got to be bringing that money in. And this other writer came to me and said, "Well, do you think that this one guy who runs a convention is privileged? Because I don't see it. I think he's working class." And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, let's take him as an example. Yes, he's working class, but he's also single, um, has a full time job, has a partner, has a house, uh, straight white male, playing on easy mode, as John Scalzi says. And yeah, there's privilege to that. I have a lot of privilege. I mean, even though sometimes I feel like I'm piecing things together from month to month, day to day, and subsisting on writing income. Probably subsisting is the wrong word, because we obviously have a pretty nice life, but a lot of this is what we bought from working for many, many years. But I also come from families who are well off, and we have a safety net that a lot of people don't have. So I'm going to continue this tomorrow because I want to talk more about art and business and so forth. But those are my thoughts on this today. And I might go and ask some of the younger people what they think about volunteering. And, um, I can't tell if I'm running across particular people who have not grown up with a volunteer ethic in their families, or if we're not communicating well intergenerationally, or what have you. So we shall see. But Ren up above me again. Hi. Actually, I think that's a little bush tit. Uh, anyway, you all have a wonderful Thursday, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. Take care. Bye bye.